Chloe ran a finger over the rim of a wine glass, checking for smudges. There were none. The candlelight flickered, casting a warm glow on the beef Wellington she had spent all afternoon preparing. Its golden crust was perfect. Everything was perfect. Tonight was their 3rd wedding anniversary. A dull ache pulsed in her lower back. She unconsciously reached back, her fingers tracing the faint, silvery line of a scar hidden beneath her silk dress. A permanent reminder of the kidneys she had given him, the price she had paid for this marriage. The clock on the wall chimed 9. He was 3 hours late. She picked up her phone. The last message on the screen was from her, sent this morning. "I'll be waiting for you at home tonight." No reply. A small, bitter laugh escaped her lips. It was a sound with no humor in it. She placed the phone face down on the tablecloth, the small flame of hope inside her sputtering out, wax by painful wax. Then the sound. A soft beep 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 from the electronic lock at the entryway. Her breath caught. She stood up so quickly the chair scraped against the marble floor. A smile, practiced and gentle, formed on her lips as she hurried toward the door, ready to welcome her husband. The door swung open. Augustine Rhodes stood there, tall and imposing in a custom-tailored suit that probably cost more than a car. His face was as handsome and as cold as ever. Chloe opened her mouth to speak, but the words died in her throat. He wasn't alone. Standing just behind him, partially shielded by his broad frame, was another woman. Blonde, wavy hair, a pale, delicate face that looked perpetually on the verge of tears. Ashley Sharp, his first love. Chloe's heart didn't just sink. It plummeted, a dead weight in her chest. Her eyes locked onto Ashley's hand, which rested protectively over a softly rounded belly. Augustine's gaze swept past Chloe as if she were a piece of furniture. He walked into the living room, loosening his tie with a sharp tug. His voice was flat, devoid of any emotion, as if he were discussing the weather. "Ashley's pregnant. Her health isn't good. She'll be staying here from now on." The words hit her like a physical blow. The air rushed out of her lungs. She felt the blood in her veins turn to ice. She stared at him, her lips parting, but no sound came out. She was frozen. Ashley stepped out from behind Augustine, her eyes darting nervously toward Chloe before she spoke in a soft, weak voice. "Augustine, maybe this isn't a good idea. What if Miss Chloe is upset? Miss Chloe, not Mrs. Rhodes." The title was a deliberate, sharp-edged insult. Finally, Augustine's cold, blue eyes landed on her. A frown creased his brow. What right does she have to be upset? This is my house. He sat down on the sofa, dismissing her completely. Chloe's gaze traveled from Augustine's indifferent face to Ashley's triumphant one, and finally to the now-cold anniversary dinner. The candles had burned down, dripping wax onto the pristine linen. 3 years. 3 years of devotion, of swallowing her pride, of trying to be the perfect wife. It all felt like a joke, a cruel, elaborate joke, and she was the punchline. She didn't feel pain. Not anymore. Just a profound, bone-deep chill, an overwhelming sense of disgust. Ashley moved closer to Augustine, leaning against him. She stroked her stomach, a gesture of pure ownership, her eyes glinting with a victory she didn't bother to hide. Augustine's patience seemed to snap. He glared at Chloe, who was still standing motionless by the door. "What are you just standing there for? Go get Ashley a glass of hot water." He said it so casually, like he was talking to a maid. A tremor ran through Chloe's body, her hands clenched into fists, her nails digging so deep into her palms that she felt the sting. She lifted her head. The amber eyes that had once looked at him with so much love were now empty, a barren wasteland where affection used to grow. Her gaze bypassed him entirely, landing squarely on Ashley. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the tension in the room like a shard of glass. "Is the baby in your stomach his?" Ashley flinched, startled by the directness, the coldness in Chloe's tone. She shrank back against Augustine and gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. Augustine's face darkened with anger. "Chloe, watch your tone." She ignored him. A soft, chilling laugh escaped her lips. It was a sound so foreign, so devoid of warmth, that it sent an inexplicable shiver down Augustine's spine. She finally looked at him. Her expression was perfectly calm. "Augustine Rhodes," she said, her voice steady. "Let's get a divorce." The word hung in the air. Divorce. Augustine stared at her, a flicker of surprise in his cold eyes, quickly replaced by a derisive smirk. "Chloe, what trick are you trying to pull now?" His expression made it clear he thought this was just another one of her pathetic attempts to get his attention. Ashley's face went white. She clutched Augustine's arm, her eyes instantly filling with tears. "Augustine, isn't me? Did I make things difficult for you? I'll leave. I'll leave right now." She turned as if to go, but her steps were clumsy. She swayed, a hand flying to her forehead as if she were about to faint. Instinctively, Augustine reached out and steadied her. His brow furrowed as he shot a glare at Chloe. "Look what you've done. Ashley is pregnant." Just then, the front door opened again. A woman, impeccably dressed and radiating an aura of cold authority, swept into the room. It was Augustine's mother, Eleanor Rhodes. Her sharp eyes immediately found the fragile, swaying Ashley. She rushed to her side. "Ashley, my dear, how is my grandchild?" she asked, her voice laced with genuine concern. Her arrival was no coincidence. It was a well-timed performance. After settling Ashley onto the sofa, Eleanor turned her venomous gaze on Chloe. The Baron hen dares to make a scene in here. The Rhodes family has had enough of you. For 3 years, Eleanor had never shown Chloe an ounce of kindness, her disdain growing with every month Chloe failed to conceive. Chloe looked at the mother and son, flanking their precious vessel, and felt a wave of absurdity wash over her. She didn't argue. She didn't defend herself. She simply repeated her earlier statement, her voice flat and even. Augustine, tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, at the courthouse. Bring your lawyer. Her composure, her unyielding calm, seemed to unnerve him. A muscle in his jaw twitched, and for the first time, his gaze flickered with something akin to uncertainty. Eleanor's voice rose, shrill and piercing. Are you insane? Without Augustine, you can't even afford your next meal? Seeing her cue, Ashley began her act again. She pressed her fingers to her temple, her body going limp as she collapsed against Augustine's chest. A soft moan escaped her lips. I feel dizzy. My stomach, it hurts a little. Augustine's attention snapped back to her, his face filled with alarm. Ashley, what's wrong? He said, scooping her into his arms. I'll call the doctor immediately. The living room descended into chaos. Eleanor barked orders at the housekeeper. Augustine held Ashley, his expression a mask of worry. No one looked at Chloe. She was an outsider, a ghost in the home she had tried so hard to build. She watched the ridiculous drama unfold, and the last, lingering ember of affection in her heart turned to ash. She turned her back on them. Without a single glance behind her, she walked toward the grand staircase leading to the second floor. Her posture was perfect, her spine straight as a rod of iron. There was no hesitation in her steps. In the midst of the commotion, Augustine looked up. He saw her retreating back, the sheer finality in her movement. His hands clenched at his sides as he stared after her. Chloe, he yelled after her. You dare walk out that door. His threat was empty, and they both knew it. Her footsteps didn't even pause. Eleanor fanned the flames. Let her go. Let the worthless woman leave. It just makes more room for Ashley and my precious grandchild. Chloe reached her bedroom and locked the door, shutting out the noise from downstairs. She didn't cry. She walked to her closet, pushed aside the expensive dresses Augustine had bought her, and pulled a dusty suitcase from the very back. She opened it. Inside were a few simple, well-made pieces of clothing with no visible logos, the clothes she had owned before she became Mrs. Rhodes. She stripped off the designer dress she'd worn to please him and changed into a simple pair of trousers and a cashmere sweater. Then, she went to the nightstand. From a hidden compartment in the back of the drawer, she took out a sleek, black smartphone, a phone that had never been turned on inside this house. Chloe's thumb pressed the power button on the black phone. The screen lit up, revealing a minimalist interface. There was only one app, a secure contact list. Her finger didn't hesitate. She tapped the name at the very top. Clayton. The call connected almost instantly. A man's voice, deep and steady, came through the line. Chloe, you finally decided to use this phone. There was an undercurrent of concern in his tone, mixed with the relief of a long-held vigil finally ending. A sudden sting pricked Chloe's eyes, but she forced the tears back. Her voice was terrifyingly calm. Brother, I need you to come get me. She paused, the next words tasting like ash in her mouth. I'm getting a divorce. 3 seconds of absolute silence on the other end. Then, Clayton's voice returned, stripped of all warmth, now as cold and sharp as a surgeon's scalpel. Address. I'll be there in 15 minutes. No questions. No judgment. Just immediate, unconditional support. Chloe gave him the address and ended the call. She slipped the phone into her handbag, along with her passport and a few personal cards. She took nothing else that belonged to the Rhodes family. She grabbed the handle of her small suitcase and unlocked the bedroom door. Downstairs, a family doctor was fussing over the weak and distressed Ashley. Augustine stood nearby, his brow furrowed in a deep frown. When he saw Chloe descending the stairs with a suitcase in her hand, his expression turned thunderous. I warned you not to leave, he said, his voice low and menacing. Chloe acted as if she hadn't heard him. She walked straight toward the front door, the heels of her boots clicking a sharp, determined rhythm on the marble floor. Her complete disregard for him ignited his fury. He strode forward and grabbed her wrist, his grip like a steel band. How long are you going to keep this up? His fingers dug into her flesh, sending a jolt of pain up her arm. Chloe winced, her brow tightening. She wrenched her arm free from his grasp, her eyes flashing with cold fire. Mr. Rhodes, please have some self-respect. By tomorrow, we will be strangers. Mr. Rhodes. The formal address was like a needle to his heart. She had always called him Augie, her voice soft and warm. As they stood in a tense standoff, the doorbell rang. The housekeeper looked nervously at Augustine before shuffling to open it. Standing on the doorstep was a man in a finely tailored overcoat and gold-rimmed glasses. Behind him, parked at the curb, was a black Maybach, a rare sight even in Manhattan's most affluent neighborhoods. The man's demeanor was calm and scholarly, but the gray eyes behind his lenses were sharp as daggers. His gaze swept over the chaotic scene in the living room, finally settling on Chloe, whose wrist was still red from Augustine's grip. Clayton Montgomery's expression turned to ice. He ignored everyone else, walking directly to Chloe. He shrugged off his own expensive coat and draped it over her thin shoulders. Then, as if brushing away a piece of dirt, he calmly removed Augustine's lingering hand from his sister's arm. Clayton's voice was soft, for her ears only. Did he hurt you? Chloe shook her head. For the first time that night, a crack appeared in her composure, a hint of vulnerability. Brother, let's go home. Augustine stared at the powerful man before him, then at the impossibly expensive car parked outside. A toxic mix of anger and suspicion churned in his gut. He demanded of Chloe, "Who is he?" Chloe didn't answer. Clayton answered for her. He looked at Augustine, his eyes filled with a contempt so profound it was almost pitying, as if he were looking at an insect. "You don't have the right to know." With that, he took the suitcase from Chloe's hand, wrapped a protective arm around her shoulders, and guided her out of the gilded cage that had suffocated her for 3 years. Augustine could only watch, paralyzed, as Chloe got into the Maybach and vanished into the New York night.